The arena lights blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the blood-stained sand. The crowd roared, their voices shaking the metal stands as the last challenger fell. She stood victorious, her silver skin gleaming under the artificial sun. Four arms flexed, each one stronger than the last. Her name was known across the galaxy, the undefeated. No warrior had ever lasted more than a minute against her. The announcer's voice boomed. Once again, our champion remains unbroken. Is there no one left who dares to face her? Silence. Then, a murmur spread through the crowd. A lone figure stepped forward. He was smaller than the others, only 2 arms, no claws, no scales. Just soft pink skin and a calm expression. A human. Laughter erupted. The alien girl smirked. You, she scoffed. You think you can fight me? The human shrugged. I don't think. He cracked his knuckles. I know. The crowd fell silent. The alien girl lunged, fast, brutal, her fists like crashing meteors. But the human wasn't there. He moved faster. A single punch landed. And for the first time in her life, the undefeated fell. The arena was dead silent. The alien girl lay on the ground, her vision blurred, her body screaming in pain. She had never felt pain before, not like this. Not from a single hit. She forced herself up, her 4 arms trembling. The human stood a few steps away, relaxed, as if he hadn't just done the impossible. How? She growled, her voice raw. The human tilted his head. You rely on strength. I rely on skill. The crowd erupted, some in shock, some in anger. Betting chips flew through the air. No one had expected this. No one had ever beaten the undefeated. The alien girl wiped blood from her lip. Pride burned in her chest. She had spent her whole life proving she was the strongest. And now, this human had humiliated her in front of the entire galaxy. Again, she snarled. The human shook his head. You don't want this. She lunged. This time, she was faster, angrier. Her fists were a blur, each strike meant to crush bone. But the human dodged, every single one. He moved like water, slipping past her attacks with terrifying ease. Then, another punch. She hit the ground again, gasping. The human crouched beside her. You're strong, he said. But strength alone won't beat me. She glared up at him. Then teach me. The crowd gasped. The undefeated had never asked for anything. The human studied her for a long moment. Then, he smiled. Fine. But you won't like it. The training hall was nothing like the arena. No roaring crowds, no flashing lights, just cold metal walls and the scent of sweat. The alien girl stood stiffly, her pride still bruised from her defeat. The human tossed her a simple cloth training GI. Put this on. She sneered. I don't need. First lesson, he interrupted. You listen. His voice was calm, but something in his eyes made her obey. For hours, he drilled her in basic stances, footwork, balance, how to fall without breaking. It was maddening. She was a warrior who had shattered champions, yet here she was, practicing how to stand. This is a waste of time, she snapped after the 5th repetition. I need to learn how to beat you, not play games. The human didn't react. You lost because you were sloppy. Power means nothing if you can't control it. He stepped forward, fast, and before she could blink, his palm tapped her chest. Dead. She snarled and swung at him. He sidestepped, swept her legs, and she crashed onto the mat. Again. Dead. She lunged. He twisted her wrist, flipped her over his shoulder. Dead. Over and over, until her muscles burned and her pride was ground into dust. Finally, panting, she stayed down. "Why are you doing this?" The human sat beside her. "Because you remind me of someone." "Who?" He smirked. "Me." For the first time in her life, the undefeated felt something new, not anger, not frustration, but curiosity. Who was this human? And why was he so much stronger than her? Days blurred into weeks. The alien girl trained until her muscles screamed and her mind burned with exhaustion. The human was relentless, no praise, no shortcuts. Just repetition. Again, he would say, every time she failed. And she failed often. One evening, as she nursed fresh bruises, she finally asked the question gnawing at her. "Where did you learn to fight like this?" The human paused, staring at the stars through the training hall's high windows. "A place called Earth," he said. "A world where everything tries to kill you, gravity, weather, even the plants. Humans didn't start strong. We became strong." She frowned. "Your species has no claws, no armor." "How?" He grinned. "By fighting smarter." Then he tossed her a weighted staff. "Now show me what you've learned." This time, she didn't charge blindly. She watched. Waited. When she struck, it was precise, a faint low, then a whip-fast slash toward his ribs. The human blocked, but his eyebrows rose. Better. For the first time, she lasted more than 3 moves. When he finally disarmed her, it was with a nod instead of a critique. Later, as she gulped water, a shadow filled the doorway. A hulking alien champion, one she'd crippled in the arena years ago, smirked at her. "Heard the undefeated got humbled. Came to see if you'd learned to beg." Before she could react, the human stepped between them. "Leave." The brute laughed. "Or what, little flesh bag?" The human's stance shifted, subtle, deadly. "Or I'll teach you how fragile your bones really are." Something in his voice made the champion hesitate. Then he spat and lumbered away. The alien girl stared at her teacher. "You would have fought him for me?" The human shrugged. "You're my student now." As if that explained everything. That night, she realized something terrifying. She no longer wanted to beat him. She wanted to be him. The arena buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread, the undefeated would fight again. But this time, she wasn't alone. The human stood in her corner, arms crossed. "Remember," he said as the crowd roared. "Control beats power. Timing beats speed." Her opponent was a mountain of muscle and chitin, a champion from the warworld of Crixus. He sneered at her. "I'll break you in half, little silver worm." The bell rang. Old instincts screamed at her to charge, to crush. Instead, she breathed, just as the human had taught her, and waited. The Crixian swung first, a hammer blow that could dent steel. She sidestepped, feeling the wind of its passage. "Dead," she whispered, and drove her elbow into his nerve cluster. The giant howled, his arm going limp. The crowd lost their minds. Round after round, she dismantled him, not with brute force, but with surgical precision. When the final bell rang, the Crixian was on his knees, wheezing. The human nodded from the sidelines. That nod meant more than any trophy. But as she left the arena, a group of armored figures blocked her path. The High Clade, the ruthless syndicate that owned the fighting circuits. "You've changed your style," their leader hissed. "Our betting pools are ruined. You will fight the old way, or you will disappear." She bared her teeth. "Try it." The human's hand landed on her shoulder. "Not here," he murmured. That night, as they packed their gear, she finally understood. Strength wasn't just about winning fights. It was about choosing them. The safehouse stank of cheap fuel and paranoia. The alien girl paced like a caged beast, her claws leaving grooves in the metal floor. "We should have crushed them when we had the chance," she growled. The human didn't look up from cleaning his pistol. "And then what? Fight the entire Clade army?" "Yes." He sighed. "That's why you needed a teacher." Outside, the neon lights of the city cast sickly colors through the window. The High Clade owned this world, its arenas, its docks, its law enforcement. Running wasn't an option. The human snapped his weapon shut. "We need leverage." "What leverage?" "The kind that makes warlords nervous." He pulled a data crystal from his pocket, one she hadn't seen before. "Every dirty deal, every fixed fight, every murder the Clades ever covered up. All here." Her eyes widened. "How? I wasn't always a fighter." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "On Earth, we have a saying, know thy enemy." A thunderous boom shook the building. The door sensors flashed red, breach detected. The human tossed her a pistol. "Time for your final test." The wall exploded inward. Clade enforcers poured through, weapons raised. The alien girl felt something strange, not fear, but clarity. For the first time, she didn't fight like a hurricane. She fought like a human. Gunfire turned the safehouse into a storm of sparks and screams. The alien girl moved like liquid metal, dodging, countering, putting bullets between enemy eyes with terrifying precision. Beside her, the human fought differently. Where she flowed, he erupted. Every strike carried the weight of a world that had forged warriors in fire and desperation. "Left flank," he barked. She spun without hesitation, her pistol taking out 3 Clade soldiers before they could raise their weapons. The last enforcer fell. Silence descended, broken only by their ragged breathing. The human tapped his wrist comm. The data crystal's contents now pulsed across every screen in the city, evidence spreading like a virus through the Clade's empire. "They'll collapse within hours," he said. "Too many enemies, too many debts to answer for." The alien girl stared at him, really stared. This wasn't just some arena brawler. This was a soldier, a strategist, a force of nature wrapped in fragile-looking skin. "You planned this from the start," she realized. "You came here to destroy them." He gave her that infuriating half-smile. "I came to teach you what strength really is." A ship's engines roared outside, their escape. As they raced through the crumbling city, she understood at last. Humans weren't strong because they could punch harder. They were strong because they thought harder. The galaxy had feared the wrong thing about humanity. It wasn't their fists. It was their minds. And now, thanks to him, she had both. "Where now?" she asked as they boarded. The human powered up the engines. "Wherever needs us." As the stars blurred to streaks, the alien girl, no longer the undefeated, but something more, smiled for the first time in her life. She had been wrong about strength. And that was the greatest victory of all.